Good evening. We have gathered here today to think and dwell upon how fast the world is growing today. Remember the times when we used to look at the moon and wonder what if we were in some other part of the world and whether the moon would look the same? Remember when I was a little girl, I used to always think that the earth is round. How is it possible that nobody falls down? And then I gradually learned that there is some concept called as gravity, and that is what holds the people together. And then there were days when we were young when there used to be telegrams and talking to people. Remember, when my uncle used to live in America, it used to be such a distant dream to think about going to the US or to even know what is the climate like over there. And now, as we have grown over the years, we are in the 21st millennium. It has become so easy to reach out to any part of the world, to think that if today I'm in India, I could be there in the US tomorrow. I could be in the Atlantics another day. I could be traveling through air anywhere in the world. What is it that has made it happen? Yes, you're right, it is technology. Technology has brought the world together. The world has shrunk today. The world is flat. As we say, the Thomas Friedman's concept, the famous book that he wrote, The World is Flat, which says that as the world is getting flatter, the opportunities are coming closer to the people. It is now very much easy to think what is the food, the lifestyle, the culture of the people living in another part of the world. So dear students, you all are today in India. Tomorrow you could be in another part of the world. Don't worry, you would still feel the same. You will still breathe the same air. You will still be having the comfort of the people around you. But what is it that has made it happen? The answer is technology. So yes, it is technology that has made the world come close to each other. And what is the impact of this technology? The one major impact is it has led to globalization. What is this globalization? So far we were familiar with just one word, and that was globe. Remember, the globe used to be in the geography laboratories where we would go as little children and look at it and spot various continents. And how this "zation" has been added to it and calling it globalization? Well, the world is definitely flat today. Flattening of the world means that we are now connecting all the knowledge centers of the world together into a single global network. The book that Thomas Friedman has written, The World is Flat, has given a new concept to all of us. The author's profile is very, very interesting, and it's a good idea, children, that you must read this book. We have a number of copies in our library. Thomas Friedman was born in 1953, was an American journalist. He was the winner of the Pulitzer Prize 3 times, and he has written about foreign affairs. He's written about the global trade, globalization, and environmental issues. So he talks about the 3 eras of globalization. The first era, 1.0, where the world shrank from the size large to a size medium. That is, a lot of exploration took place. There was colonization that took place. India itself was a colony of Britain. So the countries of the world came closer to each other. Then the second phase was the world shrank from the size medium to the size small. And now what happened? We were able to come closer to each other, and the countries of the world started collaborating. That is, they started thinking that we must depend and take the assistance of each other so that we could survive. So for the purpose of surviving and making a do with what are the things they were not having, the countries of the world started working together and they learned a new word called collaboration. So what were the years for this? Globalization 2.0, 1822, year 2000. The next stage was the present globalization age in which you and I are living, and that is 3.0. The 3.0 stage is the world shrank from size small to size tiny. And today, within a fraction of a second, we can press a number and talk to a person who could be sitting in Antarctica, who could be sitting in Australia or anywhere in the world. And yes, individuals and small groups are driven though by their nationalities, but they have learned to make the best use of each other's assets. So globalization, which started in the first half, that is called through railroads and steam engines, moved on to the use of fiber optics, and then the Apple Mac Pro got introduced. There were satellites up in the air and the communication channels became much better. Also in Globalization 3.0, which I just spoke to you about, the world shrank and it became even tiny. That means now the place where you are, you can actually, with the help of Google Maps, locate that place, go and mark it and see where you are living. So the first event that took place that helped in globalization was the fall of the Berlin Wall. Yes, between the East and the West Germany. The wall that was there, it fell on 11 September 89, and it tipped the balance of power, towards democracy and towards a free market economy. We drifted from the stage of the closed door economy, which was initially propagated by China. This wall was blocking the way to progress. And the second flattener was the new age of connectivity, the coincidence of three events that took place, that is the internet, the World Wide Web, that is WWW, and Netscape. Now, what really popularized the internet and the web was the ease to use browser. This in turn made something like Bangalore a suburb of Boston, because now the places of the world grew close to each other. The flattener number 3, that is the workflow software. Now the machines interacting with other machines without human intervention. That is the global platforms and the standards, they allowed the software applications to enhance collaborations. More people were seamlessly connected to each other. And the flattener number 4 is the uploading, the capacity to create, to collaborate, to develop and then upload information, store data, exchange that data, share the opinions on different issues, pictures and software into the web. So we could upload new things on the internet, on the web, and download the things which were uploaded by someone else. This was flattener number 4. And there came Wikipedia, and it came the blogger. People started blogging their information. And flattener number 5, outsourcing. This was a new thing that the people learned, that it focused primarily on the extensive opportunities that came into India to access highly qualified English-speaking engineers. That is, any asset now that India did not have, we were able to outsource it from the other parts of the world. Flattener number 6, that is offshoring. Offshoring is taking an entire factory and moving it offshore. That is going and operating in another part of the world. The whole new opportunities for offshoring developed when China entered the WTO. So that is, if you're sitting in the US and you don't figure out how to get into China in 10 or 15 years, you will not be a global leader. This is what the book talks about. Flattener number 7, supply chaining. Walmart, you all are familiar now, collaborating horizontally amongst the suppliers, collecting things and putting it forward in front of the masses. The more supply chains eliminate points of friction, the more efficiencies of one company they get adopted by another. Flattener number 8, that is insourcing. What is insourcing? Insourcing is a process where a company goes inside another organization and then brings their skills and their expertise while taking on the brand of that organization. So we move down to informing, that is going digital, the new flattened informed world. It is this particular world that is having the ability to build and deploy your own supply. The flattener number 10, steroids. What do we mean by steroids? The new technologies that are amplifying and turbocharging all the other flatteners, that is computing speed and capacity. Moreover, instant messaging. That is value-added services that we are having these days. They are happening because of video conferencing, computer graphics, wireless technologies and devices. So this is a basic introduction about what is the meaning of the world is getting flatter by the day. And now I would like to ask you all, what is it that comes to your mind when you think about the word globalization? Does it cause any kind of picture? Do you get to see a picture? What kind of a picture do you see when you think about the word globalization? So globalization is something which is not really unknown to all of us. It is something that is making the things clearer. So as you can see over here, that integration of economies is called globalization. Communication and coming together and making the world a better place is also globalization. So you could always project what you think about globalization in the form of a mind map that you can see over here. The communication strategy, the outsourcing, the branding, the growth, also accompanied by poverty, led to globalization. So the terrorism also came because we had different people exchanging the cultures. The world began to shrink. And then, though there was free trade and the countries of the world, moved from one place to another because they realized there were benefits in other parts of the world and they could stand to gain through that. But at the same time, it led to poverty as well, because many countries of the world were deprived of certain good qualities that they earlier had. Their own limited space that was there. Now it began to be encroached by certain multinationals. So what is this that we are talking about? We are talking about the various components of globalization. When we talk about the basic definition, there's a famous definition of globalization that it is the state of the world involving the networks of interdependence at multi-continental distances. I repeat, it is a state of the world involving networks of interdependencies at multi-continental distances. Then What do we mean by the word World Bank? Globalization is the growing integration of economies and societies around the world. Thomas Friedman also brought the concept of the Lexus and the olive tree. The globalist system has replaced the Cold War system. The Cold War was when people would have differences of opinion, and within a particular territory, two different segments would conflict with each other. Whereas a globalist system is when we are open, there is more of democratic attitude amongst the people, but the bigger fish always tries to eat up and gobble down the smaller fish. This new system has unique rules, it has got certain logic, it's got certain pressures, at the same time incentives. So the golden straitjacket, it must abide by goals of free market principles. And the Friedman, when he gave the concept of globalization, the new structure and the balance of power, he meant that the traditional balance between the states and the countries is that US is the paramount player. This is something that over the years has appeared. The balance between the states and the global markets, states cannot ignore the market any longer without costs. The balance between the individuals and the states, people influence governments through the market at home and abroad for good or for evil. Globalization produces super empowered individuals. So the important conclusions from Friedman's argument are, there are rewards. Those who participate in globalization are rewarded. Though there are winners and there are losers. Second, the peace dividend. Those who are engaged in globalization have too much to lose with war. Third, the democratic divide. The free movement of information with markets produces drive for freedom and liberty. So this leads to sowing the seeds of democracy. So whenever there is free movement and people are free to exchange, there is freedom of mind and expression, therefore it leads to the democratic power. There are three components of globalization: the economic globalization, the political globalization, as well as the cultural globalization. Is there a global economy? If so, is this good? We need to think about it. First of all, who are the globalizers? Yes, the increased integration. This integration of people and economies across the space, it has brought a higher volume of trade, right? So we are definitely doing better than what we were doing 20 years, 25 years down the line. This means more goods and services for most of the world. So we are working more, we are creating more things for ourselves, we are exchanging more, there is more freedom of expression, there is more opportunity to grow. The increased gross domestic products and overall standard of living for those that participate is also there in a global economy. The gross domestic product of every country has gone up. So there has been an increasing world trade, wherein US being one of the leaders, there are other leaders also. And we can see that Eastern Europe has been doing steadily well. The Western Europe has been doing steadily well, whereas the Eastern Europe and the former USSR is also, catching up now, currently. The Latin American states have been doing pretty okay. The Asian countries have, suddenly they have moved up. Their growth is immense. The African nations, again, there is a lot of growth. And if we see overall across the world, in the year 1870, the growth index was 4.6. In the year 1950, the growth index has moved up to 5.5. And in 1998, the growth index has come to 17.2. So we are definitely going in the right direction. What is the development cycle and is it working well? Well, economies in post-industrial societies, they have been increasingly depending on the service sector. Developing countries are industrializing. By the late 1990s, almost 50% of the total world manufacturing jobs were located in developing economies, while over 60% of developing countries' exports to the industrialized world were manufactured goods. So this vast difference is something that we need to pay attention to. What about America or the US? Loss of manufacturing jobs were very natural. 2.6 million between 1979 to 1999. That is, loss of jobs, more of machines coming in, but the overall jobs did go up because of service sector booming up, especially in 1990. Increasing role of the service sector, that is IT, it went up. The banking, the insurance and the service sector industries, they definitely helped in raising the gross domestic product per capita and the overall standard of living. Cheaper goods and services with global market, definitely in a global market when the production is in bulk, the prices are low. So is economic globalization good? So when we talk about economics, whether now within the same amount of money that we used to spend earlier, are we producing better in quality and more in number and reaching out to definitely more people? Yes, all boats rising. For those who participate, but at different rates. Raised incomes, though not equal incomes. So we cannot talk about equality, no, nowhere close to it. Raised incomes, not equal, more individual choice and freedom in the marketplace, yes. Costs of goods and services go down because there is economies of manufacturing. The World Bank, what does World Bank has to say? What about the policy research they have done? So their report that they came out with in the year 2002, there were certain key points which I would like all of you to know. That strong correlation exists between integrating into the world economy and economic growth. So poor countries with around 3 billion people, they have broken into the global market for manufacturers and for services. High growth rates increase a country's GDP and standard of living. So these are the points that I am telling you about the World Bank report of 2002. Globalization has definitely reduced the number of people living in poverty by over 120 million. Globalization has not increased income inequality, right? So that is already there. So globalization has reduced poverty, but not everywhere. About 2 billion people have been left out of the globalization process. So if we look at the success stories or the new globalizers, they include countries like China, India, Bangladesh, Uganda and Vietnam. And why are these countries successful today? Because they have good investment climate. They invite a lot of multinationals. Social policies that aid human capital are also existing in these countries. There was a related study by David Dollar and Art Cray, Spreading the Wealth of Foreign Affairs. And in that study says the current wave of globalization has reduced poverty and promoted economic equality. The key examples are China and India, where the account for 36% of the world's population. That is important examples of how to do it are there. When we look at the report of United Nations 2003, it says that China has lifted 150 million people out of poverty in the last 10 years. That's a significant chunk. The biggest success story in international poverty alleviation. Why is it so? Can anyone tell me why China was able to do it? Because there was rapid economic growth, obviously. Secondly, the political will of the government was there, because they have a centralized controlled government and they have one kind of opinion. And thirdly, the economic and policy reforms have been taking place. That is, there are more open trade, there is investment with the help of technology as well. Now, what do the separatists have to say? That is, skeptics, no, not a globalized economy. Trade is overwhelmingly dominated by the developed countries, US and Europe. World economy is dominated by the US and main US powers. Well, this is the other side of the thing. Major US traded partners are Canada, Mexico, Japan, China, Germany, UK, South Korea, Taiwan, France. So when we look at the flip side of it, then we have to take along one important thing, and that is that developed countries have overwhelmingly advanced with investment and trade. They have done little to help poor countries. Center for Global Development and Foreign Policy magazine, they recently ranked overall contributors by developed countries to developing countries. So if we overall see the shape that exists today, then globalization does not alleviate inequality and poverty. It increases it. But there are other benefits which we cannot ignore. So the gap between the rich and the poor countries has increased. The gap has gone up. What is a good example? China, where the top 10% of bottom 10% income ratio is 1:35. Very, very steep, I must say. Countries with the highest inequality and income and consumption is the Saharan Africa. So, as we come to the next point, I would like you all to also realize that the globalization hurts the workers in developing countries, where the people are forced to work for cheap wages and in poor working conditions, that is in China and in India. The rights of the workers are completely ignored. The cheap foreign competitions and offshore production of manufacturing hurts American workers like Pilotex. Globalization is undermining the white-collar class as well, with the export of jobs, for instance, to India. So labor is anything but global today. Developed countries are still protectionist. This hurts the developing countries. It limits globalization and only helps the already developed. Now, the important points that emerge are China and India are important cases, but they don't represent the world. Need to ask what life would be like in China, India and other globalizers without reforms. Rich countries have grown richer and most of the very, very poor countries have stayed poor. Question is why? Some governments clearly fail to provide a sufficient environment to economic growth and development. Others fail to create fair tax system, for example, Guatemala. Some governments are politically unready to even try to provide a proper environment, that is the failed states. So the key differences between the globalists and skeptics revolve around efficiency, that is let them eat cake, fairness, society, social safety matters, and third, quality of life under globalization. So therefore, we need policies that address all of them, and we need to aim for the sustainable development. Globalization is there to stay. It's for us, the people of this world, to realize that we need to deal with the efficiency, we need to be fair, at the same time we need to have the quality of life under globalization. Thank you.